Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin, so can I remind you to just put your cell phone on mute or vibrate. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's forum, a special presentation on Libya, the humanitarian perspective. My name is Margaret Lee, and I'm the representative of Medical Teams International in Minnesota. I want to thank you all for coming and for your interest in this very important topic. I also want to thank our panel of speakers, Congressman Keith Ellison, Bess Vandersam, and Jamal Tahouni, and both Bess and Jamal came in from Portland, Oregon to join us today. Thank you. I also want to thank our moderator, Professor Cyrus Bina, who drove in from Morris at 4 in the morning this morning. So thank you very much, Cyrus. I also want to thank our co-sponsors without whose support this forum would not have been possible. First and foremost is the Humphrey Institute and Dr. Sherry Gray. Thank you, Sherry. The Minnesota International Center, represented today by Daniel Getterhun. The Books for Africa, represented today by Lane Ayers. And also the Minnesota International NGO Network, represented today by Stella Stalin. Thank you very much for the support. And well, Medical Teams International is a 30-year-old Christian humanitarian aid organization working in over 50 countries around the world. We serve people who are affected by disaster, conflict, and poverty, regardless of their faith. We are headquartered in Portland, Oregon, and we established a presence in Minnesota about 2 years ago, starting with a mobile dental van program serving the underserved in Minnesota. Each year, over 2,500 volunteers contribute to our work, both in the US and also around the world. On February 25, 2011, long before Libya was even in the headlines, and certainly long before NATO was even involved, Medical Teams International sent its first volunteer medical team into Libya, along with its first shipment of medical supplies. On March 13, 2011, I convened an insider briefing conference call, which was participated by Libyans all over the US. Congressman Keith Ellison was also on the call. In fact, Congressman called us right the minute when his plane landed in Washington, D.C. from the tarmac. Thank you, Congressman, for your support of our work. And hence leading to today's forum. I have the distinct honor today of introducing to you our moderator, Dr. Cyrus Bina. Cyrus Bina is the Distinguished Research Professor of Economics at the University of Minnesota Morris campus. He is an economist and an expert on the political economy and politics of the Middle East and North Africa, and an authority on the social transformation of modern Iran. His most recent book is Oil, A Time Machine, Journey Beyond Fanciful Economics and Frightful Politics. Dr. Bina has written and spoken extensively on post-revolutionary Iran and the nature of conflict in the Middle East and North Africa. He has written several books and more than 200 scholarly articles, policy pieces, and commentaries on oil, Iran, and US foreign policy. In addition, Dr. Bina is a scholar of labor relations and social movements across the globe. His scores of articles on global transformation, technological change, and formation of skills are also testament to his encyclopedic knowledge of globalization. Cyrus is an active member of many professional and civic organizations, including Economists for Peace and Security and Union of Concerned Scientists. He is currently an editor of the Journal of Critical Studies in Business and Society. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Professor Cyrus Bina.
Thank you, Barkat. It's a pleasure to be here as a moderator here, representing the Humphreys School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota, with three distinguished speakers here. And I'm trying to summarize, and of course, we will have very limited time here for presentations, and therefore I apologize. You can go to Google and look at the extensive resume of all three, including my dear friend, Congressman Elliot Ellison, and therefore I would like to be brief. Congressman Keith Ellison is serving in the House of Representatives since 2007. He's from the 5th District of Minnesota, DFL, and his background in education is in economics. He's my colleague in economics, bachelor's degree in economics from Wayne State, and of course, a law degree from our own law school here at the University of Minnesota. He has been very much involved in politics of the region and have been very helpful in terms of finding a medium and negotiating possibilities on the question of Iran and other places. And he just arrived from the region. And I'm extremely happy to have him here. And let me introduce the second one and third one simultaneously, and then sit down so that they can take their places. The second speaker has 40 years of service in the Christian organizations around the world. Since 1982, Bas Wandelzaam has been the organized member of the medical team international since 1997 as well. And he currently oversees several hundred staff members and thousands of volunteers who work with local partners and carry on the mission of the team altogether all over the world. And his location is the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. His background, of course, very interesting. He got a bachelor's degree in Calvin College and then moved to finish a master's degree in divinity in the Newton School of Theology, and to top that off, got an MBA in healthcare management. He is the president of Medical Team International currently. And the third speaker is the native of Libya, of course, Jamal Tarhouni. Mr. Jamal Tarhouni came here to the United States in 1974. He finished up the engineering school and technical degrees from Portland State University, and since then he is both professional and active member of the community in the United States. He has been very instrumental in terms of working together with Medical Team International to be able to deliver $3.5 million in medicine and medical supplies to Libya, and has been very much involved with the opposition to Colonel Gaddafi's regime all along, and of course have been very participant in the recent transformation and uprisings there. He's also a board member of the interim chairman of the Libyan Council for North America and chairman of the Libyan Community Association in Oregon. Let me add one more thing. Every discussion, every points and so forth, and transformations, and any subject has two sides. There are two sides on the coin. And of course, this side hopefully would be dealing with the humanitarian aspect. And as far as I'm concerned, and given my own position on the U.S. foreign policy, which of course Congressman Keith Ellison is very much aware of it, it would be very untenable if I want to advocate things in a very black and white situation or fashion altogether. Therefore, I'm emphasizing this is on the report on the medical side of Libya, even though discussions can be welcome on the other issues related to the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi's regime in Libya. Thank you very much, Congressman.
Thank you, Professor.
Ellison.
Professor Beenan, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Thank you for all the work you've been doing over the years. Thank you for contributing to my understanding of the issues. And also let me just also include in that thanks Margaret Lee, who has been a tireless advocate for humanitarian causes, and then also MTI President Bas van der Zalm. Thank you very much for your work. And then, of course, our prolific and talented businessman / humanitarian, Jamal Terhoni. Thank you very much for all you do as well. We're very proud of our Libyan American community. It's not a huge community, but it is an active, vibrant community which can make great contributions to Minneapolis in terms of business, in terms of social reform. And so I just want you to know that when you come here, you got folks of like mind with you.
Thank you.
And I know you know that because you were hanging out with them last night.
Right.
I think the most important thing for me to say, given my role and responsibility, is that humanitarian assistance is fundamental and essential to the steady progress in Libya. And so therefore, this humanitarian role that this very important MTI organization has been playing is indispensable to the future development of Libya. Because nature hates a vacuum. And anytime there's a political transition, there is an opportunity for the noble revolutionary goals to be subverted and derailed if they take place within an environment of chaos. So humanitarian assistance, though depoliticized and dealing only with individual need, does take place within an important political context because it offers stability. And stability is what Libyan people need in order to construct their democracy, in order to live out those revolutionary goals, in order to put the Gaddafi regime behind them. Because, of course, in a transitional period like this, the political framework is in flux, and many dangerous developments can happen, and therefore the more basic humanitarian services that are available actually helps for the development of the country. So it's very important about the work that MTI is doing. You know, we see every Middle Eastern country is clearly different and unique. We make a mistake as Americans when we sort of broad brush North Africa and the Middle East. It is ethnically diverse. You have Arabs, you have Kurds, you have Azeris, you have Iranians, you have all kinds of folks. You have different languages. Yes, languages, because everyone who's been to the region knows that the people in Syria don't speak Arabic quite the same way they do in Egypt, and people in Morocco and in Algeria don't speak it the way other folks do. There is a diversity of the way people communicate, although we call it just Arabic. And those of you from the region know that I'm right about that. You know, the food is similar, but it's not the same. You know, the culture is similar, but it's not the same. The history is similar, but it's not the same. It's very important that we approach the region in a targeted way and deal with the unique features of every country. In the context of the Libyan revolution, you know, on one side you got the Egyptian revolution, on the other side you got the Tunisian revolution. And so if Libya is not sustained, if that revolution is not sustained and does not make orderly progress towards stability, democracy, human rights, that could destabilize the revolutions that are right around it. So it's not only essential for the Libyan people, it is essential for the region because, of course, though unique, all these countries are connected. They share borders. They share culture. There are many tribes that are on both sides of the border, although Libya is not. Although Libya is a tribal society, Tunisia is not necessarily one. There are no doubt significant connectedness and interconnectedness between the two. So to be able to bring food, clothing, and healthcare and medicine to the people who are in Libya, who risked everything in order to escape tyranny, is important for the overall context of the region and within the context of the entire environment. I would say a few things. Of course, medical needs are going to be absolutely essential. You have many people who've been killed from Benghazi to Misrata to Tripoli and now Sirte, and so that's essential. But you have many people who are severely wounded, but who could survive if they get the help that MTI is there to offer to them. But also, there obviously there are shortages of everything in times like this, and so bringing this stability, bringing these essential human needs forward and meeting those needs is something that I believe is essential for the future growth, development, and trajectory of the nation. So I believe that I'm calling on my government to, yes, work with the Transitional National Council to help them convert to civilian, normalized rule of the country, to engage people on all sides of the political spectrum. But of course, these things have got to take place within a context of stability and human rights. So I would ask you all, as we're having this very important conversation this morning, as Americans, to step forward and continue to help Libya and help America understand that we've got to have a new relationship with the Middle East, with Libya. Historically, our relationship has been, I would argue, fairly limited. Our relationship historically has been limited based on either oil or that Middle Eastern nation's relationship with Israel or counterterrorism. That's been pretty much the basis of our relationship. I would say in the future period, we need to enrich the relationship, particularly with Libya, but all countries in the Maghreb and in the Middle East. When I say enrich the relationship, I mean, yeah, fine. It's important. We do have some energy needs in our country. We should take care of more of them on our own. But we can't let just energy and oil and natural gas be the big enchilada when it comes to our relationship, our commercial relationship. We have to diversify our commercial relationship. We have to deepen it. And it can't just be between big companies. We have to find unique, incredible ways to help middle and small business people in Libya and the United States be able to do commerce together, because at the end of the day, this does promote economic viability and all those things that are essential, but they also bring ordinary citizens together with ordinary citizens. Libyans and Americans should get to know each other on a more intimate basis than we know each other now. Right now, the relationships are basically between oil company executives and military people, and we need to enrich that relationship on a diverse set of commercial relationships. Secondly, yes, the United States ally in the region has historically been Israel. That's not going to change. But the United States needs more than one friend in the region. And the friends that we have should not just be transactional, like our relationship with, say, Saudi Arabia has historically been. They give us oil, we give them military support. We need an enriched relationship, in which we have, we're exchanging all types of scholars, we're exchanging artistic expression, we're exchanging students, we're going back and forth so that we have a richer network of connection between our countries. This certainly needs to take place in Libya. Libya has been a country where Gaddafi has not allowed civil society to develop, and therefore, if you...
I'm sorry, excuse me.
You need some water?
No, I don't need water, I need the truth. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, I guess we'll discuss this in the question and answer period.
Yes, we will.
And so Gaddafi has not allowed civil society to develop. There is a need for civil society to be supported within Libya, but also with the international community. And so I think that this is something that we certainly need to focus our attention on. And let me say, finally, of course, the world needs security. The United States needs security. Libya needs security. The region needs security. But historically, our relationship has been basically that the leaders in many Arab countries that have been authoritarian basically make the argument that they're fighting Al-Qaeda, therefore we send them resources to carry on that fight, when in effect it is often the authoritarian nature of these countries that promotes and breeds radicalization and creates a security issue. So I believe that we need to work much more carefully on security relationships in a bilateral way and in a way between our country and the region, so that we can help really promote security and safety as opposed to simply funneling money to some authoritarian figure that we gladly send money to because, of course, he says he's going to fight terrorism. We need to change the relationship there. So let me just say, as I close up my remarks, the Middle East is changing, North Africa is changing. If we continue to try to relate to the region in the way we have historically, we will do nothing but run into serious conflict. We've got to, as the region changes, we've got to also adjust the way we relate to that. That change, the adjustment that we have to make, is going to be because Americans of various diverse backgrounds insist that we make the adjustments that need to be made. My argument is that, yes, we addressed humanitarian needs now for the reasons I already talked about, but fundamentally, we've got to readjust and enrich the network of relationships that we have in each and every country. And so thank you for listening, and I look forward to the dialogue.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Let me take 1 second and indicate that as a chair of this session, I would not allow any disruption here. The University of Minnesota is a debating society. Everybody should talk, but got to follow the order. Thank you very much, Mr. Van.
Okay. I'm Bas van der Zalm, President of Medical Teams International, and I'm grateful to be here, grateful to the Humphrey School for hosting this presentation. Professor Bina, for the time you're investing to moderate this time. And Congressman as well, I know you've got a very full schedule. I'm very grateful that you've taken the time. And this is an important topic, but I appreciate it, your being here. And not all of you may know, the Congressman just returned from a 10-day trip to the Middle East. You know, Congressman, I appreciate that because we have very important issues in our country, we all know that, but the Middle East is such a key area as well. So I'm grateful for your willingness to invest time and commit your energy there too.
Yes, sir.
And my friend Jamal from Oregon, we know each other, so I'm glad for him to join us, and I know you'll appreciate hearing from him because of his personal experience in Libya. And he actually will be heading back there on Wednesday, I think, with a team from Medical Teams International, and so will be someone who is clearly connected well to the situation in Libya. I'd like to just mention a couple things about our experience with the Libya response. You know, a year ago, none of us would have expected to be sitting in this room. I certainly wouldn't have expected to be sitting at this table because none of us necessarily could have anticipated what is happening now in North Africa and in the Middle East. So much has happened in this movement that has been called the Arab Spring movement. Which has swept out leaders in a number of Arabic countries and may produce more changes in the days ahead. When change came to Tunisia and to Egypt, we were all grateful that it came without violence, without significant bloodshed. But that wasn't the same situation when change came to Libya. Everyone knew that Muammar Gaddafi would not leave gracefully or peacefully, that there would be war. What we didn't know was what was going to happen. We anticipated the possibility of substantial humanitarian problems, refugees moving out of the country to escape fighting, bloodshed beyond what any of us wanted to think about. That was the reality in Libya in the early days as we anticipated what might come and how Gaddafi might respond. And that was what we at Medical Teams International were thinking about when we first thought, what is it that we should be doing in response to the crisis in Libya? We are a relief and development organization. We've responded to every major disaster in the past 30 years around the world. We send volunteer medical teams and shipments of assistance. In fact, we have a volunteer here with us who has served in a variety of places on our teams, and I'm grateful for his presence. And it's people from Minnesota and from Oregon and from Michigan and from throughout our country who then traveled to these places representing the best of our country and also then fulfilling the mission that Margaret explained that we have, which is demonstrating the love of Christ to people affected by disaster, conflict, and poverty. The interesting thing for us about Libya was that it's not a place that we had on our radar screen, not because it's not a place that was important, but because we typically send teams to developing countries. Libya, with its oil revenue, is not necessarily what we would have described as a developing country. In addition to that, we had no contacts in Libya. It has been a country pretty much locked down and not easily accessible or even legally accessible by American humanitarian aid groups. And finally, we're a Christian organization. Libya is a Muslim country, and so we didn't have a lot of contacts on the ground there when the conflict broke out. But what happened for us, I think, is a very interesting story. And it's a story really, in some ways, that is represented by Jamal and my being here together. Because when crises occur around the world, we often are contacted by both people in the areas where the need exists, because we've got all these relationships, but also by people who have a stake in those countries because they are from there or have lived there and care about what's happening. And they have very strong connections, and that's what happened to us. Jamal contacted us almost right away, as did Dr. Omar Reda, who is a physician on the staff at the Oregon Medical School, University of Oregon Medical School, and who was trained as an emergency medical physician in Libya, and so had lots of connections there. Dr. Omar was on his way to Libya in the middle of the conflict with a team of 6 other Libyan American physicians and medical workers to serve there, but he needed supplies. And so he lives within a mile of our office in Oregon and contacted us because he knows, when Oregon, everybody knows when a crisis happens, we respond. And we were very eager to do what we could to help. And so we provided medical supplies that he then took with him. But in addition to that, we had shipments of medical aid that we were prepared to send into Libya, but we really didn't know a reliable channel that we could use to ship those supplies in Libya, and we were not about to just send our supplies without knowing that they would really end up being used to help those who were in need. So Dr. Reda had contacts in Egypt, and we shipped our supplies through Egypt. He met those supplies in Egypt, put them on a truck, carried them into Libya, made sure that they went through into Misrata at the time, and as he drove up to a hospital there in Misrata with these surgical supplies that we had shipped into Libya, the truck had no more than stopped that they stripped that truck out of all the supplies because they were so there was so much surgery going on. They had run out of all of their medical supplies. They grabbed the supplies out of those boxes and they immediately put them to use there in Misrata in the hospital. And that in some ways is the story of this response that we've been privileged to be a part of. This team, this partnership between Libyan American people here and Medical Teams International. Dr. Reda didn't have an international humanitarian aid organization. He was an informal, that was an informal response, but we provided the connections with the United Nations and the groups there because they knew us. We have permission from the US Department of Treasury to work in places like Libya. That was not something they had, so we could ship in those supplies. It gave them, that team, a valid, legal, and formal position to move in and not simply be people who were informally responding. And we know how to send teams, and we do that all the time. And so we were able to organize that team and support it. Since that time, as Dr. Bean has pointed out, we have shipped $3.8 million worth of medical supplies, about 6 surgical kits, 8 medical kits, enough, each of those kits enough to help 10,000 people for 3 months. All of it through this structure of people and organizations that Jamal, Dr. Reda, and others know, so that all of it we know has gotten to places where the help is needed and where people have been able to put it to use. Jamal will tell you about how he has seen those supplies delivered and how he is continuing to help organize those supplies. So here we have this wonderful partnership where we've been able to work together. When we came together, we realized that it was God who brought us together. And I say that because we are a Christian organization working in partnership with a Muslim community here in the United States. And it has been a wonderful partnership of mutual trust and respect. And it's an important thing, I think, for us to highlight, because so much of the conflict in our world today has a religious base to it or a religious dimension to it. We don't care to talk about it sometimes very much, but it is something that I think we need to recognize. And here we have a partnership in this country of people from two of the major faiths in our world today, faiths that often face conflict in different places, working together, trusting each other, respecting each other. You know, as an organization, a Christian organization, we work with everyone who needs help. We serve everyone in need. And that includes in Libya, by the way, not just those who are perhaps on the transitional government side, but it also includes those who may be on the Gaddafi side who have been injured. Our volunteers have worked in hospitals in Libya where on one floor there are Gaddafi supporters and on the other floor there are transitional government supporters. And we provide medical care to both. And that's one reason why today we're talking about humanitarian aid. I don't want to send our volunteers into Libya and have them identified with a particular political point of view, because that puts a gun to the head of our volunteers. They are there to care for everybody who needs help, regardless of their background or circumstance. Anybody who is in need deserves it. They don't ask, first of all, what is your creed? What do you believe? What is your political affiliation? They simply say, you are suffering and in need, and we're going to help you. And I think that's one of the core values that I think in some ways unites us, even in this circumstance. We're glad to be in Libya. We know and we are excited about the future of the country. I agree with the Congressman that so much of what we can do in terms of humanitarian aid there, I think, will have a long-standing, significant humanitarian impact. But it's important that we protect the humanitarian identity and not be viewed as an arm of any government or any political affiliation, but simply as people attempting to do all we can to make a difference for those who are struggling. The future in Libya is, in terms of humanitarian aid, is an area that I think we could explore more. What we have done is send 9 teams in. They have served all over Libya. They started in Misrata, they served in Tripoli. They've kind of tracked with conflict as it has moved throughout the country. They've been in tent camps, they've been in hospitals, they've been dealing sometimes with infection control and sometimes with neurosurgery. It's been a very dynamic situation. I'm hoping, and we'll hear more from Jamal in terms of the Libyan community, we've been talking about this, that soon there will be an end to the conflict in Libya, which will allow the country to begin then to rebuild. When that happens, from a humanitarian aid perspective, we have to think about a couple things. One is there's a lot of oil revenue available to Libya at some point as they move forward. So it's not a country that we necessarily would expect that we would have to put a lot of humanitarian aid into in terms of the resources available. But it's a country, as the Congressman points out, that has not had any civil society in terms of people understanding how to function there, including in the medical facilities. There's a lot of training needed in terms of just the quality of medical care that people need. And I think we as Americans and others can help send in people, provide that kind of training. And third, there will be some targeted areas that need assistance right away. Lots of people have been wounded. People have lost their arms and legs, and they're struggling and suffering, and the country needs help to care for those who've been in need. And I think there are some targeted points, perhaps, where humanitarian aid agencies can function. I should say that much of what we've been able to do in Libya has been the result of financial support we have received from the Libyan American community here, the Muslim community here in the United States, and from USAID, the U.S. government, because they have provided a grant that has enabled us to send some of these teams that now currently serve, these volunteer teams. So what you see here, I think, is really, in some ways, I would describe as the best of what you'd hope to see in a situation like this. I'm hopeful about Libya. I'm grateful for the partnerships we have, and I'm looking forward to what we can do together to rebuild, help people of Libya rebuild that country. We are seeing, I think, a significant watershed moment. We're witnessing that right now. And it's interesting to see how we all can be a part of that response, with humanitarian aid perhaps being the lead connection point that I trust will be used to transform that community, and so that years from now we'll be able to see a much different Libya, a Libya filled with promise and hope, a Libya that will be a good partner on the international stage, and that itself will then be able to support humanitarian aid perhaps and needs in other parts of Africa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rizzo. Mr. Tahuni.
Good morning, and thank you for attending this conference here today. Mr. Ellison, thank you very much for all the nice comments that you've said about the Libyan people and your experience about what happened in Libya and there. And Baz, I want to thank you very much on behalf of the Libyan people for all the humanitarian effort that your organization has shared with the Libyan people during this conflict. What I would like to do is I'm going to share some pictures with you, and also share a little perspective of what happened in Libya as this conflict has started. On February 17 of 2011, the Libyan people came out in the streets to peacefully protest against the Gaddafi regime. They demanded nothing but more than basic human rights. The peaceful demands for freedom and justice were met with force by Gaddafi regime. As the days went by, innocent civilians were getting massacred by the masses. The number of deaths and casualties were rising by the hour. People around the world recognized the grave situation the innocent Libyan civilians were facing and the atrocities that the Gaddafi regime was committing only was getting worse. The world community called for an intervention by the UN and the other agencies to help the innocent Libyan people and stop the Gaddafi regime from committing any more crimes against humanity. In Portland, and as well as in other parts of the country and around the world, the Libyan community started working on finding ways to inform the local public about the tragedy that was taking place back in our beloved country. Our mission was to look for ways to help our people in any way possible through a humanitarian relief effort to alleviate the pain and suffering of the Libyan people. Towards the end of February, a partnership was developed between the Libyan community in Oregon and Medical Team International. We have established a wonderful relationship that the people of the community will ever and forever be grateful for. MTI responded immediately to the humanitarian needs the Libyan people needed, and we were able to assist with sending medicine, medical supplies, and medical teams to Libya with the first shipment that was sent about 4 days after the uprising started. As the conflict reached more serious consequences due to the increase in the number of casualties and deaths in Libya by the Gaddafi military force, people in Libya started to flee the country in neighboring countries like Egypt and Tunis. There are more than 100,000 Libyan refugees within about 4 weeks that fled the country, and they were living in Tunis and Egypt. The Tunisian people, in particular, have been very welcoming to the refugees, especially who used to live near the Tunisian borders, who by proximity fled to Tunis for safety from continuing bombardment by the Gaddafi forces against them. To assess the situation in Libya, MTI and the Libyan community sent a team to Tunis and Egypt and Libya, especially to the eastern side of the liberated part of Libya, to visit the refugees camps, visit the hospitals, and talk with people from the new governing body in Libya, the Transitional National Council, on finding more ways that the Libyan community and Medical Team International can help with. The first trip started on April 26th and lasted for 2 weeks. The trip was very successful. The objectives of the assessment were met, and recommendation was drafted for ways to help in the future. The team consisted of Dr. Tom Martin and Mr. Dave Belts from Medical Team International and myself when we entered to Libya. Just to give you a perspective of what we've done in that first trip, I'm going to share some pictures with you in there and to show you the kind of atrocities and the harm that has been committed against some of the innocent Libyans who inspired for nothing but to ask for peace and freedom in their country. This is a freedom fighter from Benghazi, from Misrata. His name is Abu Bakr, that's his father with him. And he was shot 4 times, and he was paralyzed. And he was out in the streets and trying to help liberate the country. This is a little kid, 9 years old kid, shot 2 times in the brain by the Gaddafi snipers, and some of them were mercenaries. They were brought in from African countries to fight for the Gaddafi regime. That's the kind of atrocities and the kind of treatment that Gaddafi gave to his people. Here's another guy that was shot with 4 times also, and he's paralyzed, and he's also from Misrata. This is some of the supplies that Medical Team International with Dr. Tom Martin on the left side, and Mr. Dave Peltz from Medical Team International, myself. This is supplies came to us from a doctor from Arizona that we took with us with Medical Team International. It's worth about $50,000. This is in the warehouse with the Red Crescent, the Tunisian Red Crescent president, Mr. Kalal, and Dave Peltz. And their warehouse has taken some of the Medical Team International boxes. Finding ways to transport that medicine, we had to go and find some trucks. This is more of a dump truck that we had to fill with all these boxes, and it had to be smuggled to Libya through the Tunisian borders in the south to be able to reach some of the hospitals in the western country. These are some of the doctors from the Tunisian hospitals helping perform surgeries, and we are very, very grateful because I met them in person and I've seen the work that they've done in those hospitals in there. This is what happened to the Libyan people, one of the most richest countries in the world. It should have been, but their people ended up in refugees camps because of the inhumane treatment that they have received from supposedly the leader of the country, and they ended up in refugees camps. These innocent children were hoping for a bright future in Libya, but otherwise they found someone who tried to kick them out of the country and not give them the opportunity to live in peace in their own country. They have smiles on their face because they're hoping for a better future, and thank God they will get that future now. These are some of the supplies that we purchased in Tunisia to help some of the refugees that they were housed by the by the Tunisian families. We bought some other supplies in there. This is our trip took us from Tunisia to Egypt, and this is Dr. Martin. This compound that he was at the borders of between Tunisia and Egypt, between Libya and Egypt, cost Gaddafi about $25 million, and he's never seen a day living in that compound in there. It's all got destroyed by the Gaddafi people. There's some more injured people in the hospitals in Benghazi, and that's what happened to some of the people who walked out in the streets demanding nothing but peace and freedom and to live like the rest of the world and have an opportunity to better their lives. Otherwise, they were met by bullets and guns. This is some people from the TNC group that we met with, and we were able to organize some effort to help the Libyan people in there. We were in some of the IC units, and that was the first trip. The second trip, we worked in partnership with Medical Team International and Hope Relief International and another group called Partners for World Health. It's an American team of nurses. They wanted to help in Libya, and we were very, very grateful for their help. We assembled a team of 9 nurses, and this is, all of them are from Portland, Maine, and they have done a wonderful job, and we will ever be grateful for the work they've done. Just happened when we got to Benghazi through the Egyptian borders, and we had to travel for 18 hours in buses. And by the way, we did that for both trips because there's no airlines going into Libya due to the no-fly zone that was taking place at the time. So these ladies here, they did not care about the 18-hour trip. They wanted to help, and they wanted to help the Libyan people. And they did a wonderful job, and we will ever be grateful to them. This freedom fighter, he wanted to raise his arm, and he said, "Can you hold my arm? I want to show the people the peace sign. That's what I want." And his name is Adil, and he is from Benghazi. He was shot in Brega, where the Libyan freedom fighters trying to liberate Brega from the Gaddafi forces. This is what happened to him. This is what Gaddafi did. They planted thousands and thousands and thousands of mines in lands. So these kids who wanted to free their country cannot walk in there. That's what happened. He's not only the only person that this something happened to him. A lot of them went through the same thing. This is an American nurse that wanted to help. And she's done a wonderful job with the rest of them. There's another one that was connecting to those American nurses. These American nurses, I talked to them today, and they can't wait for the day to go back because they felt that connection between them and the Libyan people. The nurses also helped educate 4th and 5th year students from the medical school who were helping in the hospitals instead of being in their classrooms, because all of the other nurses and doctors from Pakistan, Philippines, India had to leave because of the conflict. They couldn't stay in Libya because of the war zone. So those kids were helping, and some of them, they still didn't even know how to put an IV in or do a CPR. So I want to take you back to this. These nurses were handing their arms to those students so they can feel how they can put the IV and teach them how to do that. Those are 4th and 5th year students. If you compare them to a 4th and 5th year students in the United States of America, that guy can perform a surgery. A 4th and 5th student, because of the lack of the good education for them, they can't put an IV in a patient's arm. Some of the Libyan kids are in some of the hospitals. Some of them got injured. These are anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 2, 3 years old, had bullets in their backs because their mother was fleeing their house to go somewhere else, and the snipers shot them. This is a dinner that they had, and this is what they wanted to do, working together to provide hope for Libya. We will always, always be grateful to the people of the United States and Medical Team International for providing this. I get emotional when I talk about this because I've seen it with my own eyes. And so with the people that they doubt what happened in Libya or what Gaddafi has done to his people, please think again. We will ever be grateful to Medical Team International for sending about $3.8 million worth of medicine and medical equipment to Libya, for sending about 9 teams to help in the hospitals in there. And we will continue this partnership. It's been a great partnership, and I hope that more NGOs will come aboard. And there's a lot of people are working, and we hope for a much better, brighter future for Libya to live in peace with the rest of the world and in prosperity, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fahmy.
That was excellent.
Allow me to open this for the public for comments, questions, and would you please go to that, anybody wants to raise a question or make a comment, to that microphone over there so that it could be collected as well. Whatever you want to say, you can say within the bounds of the University of Minnesota free speech.
I'd just like to address the crowd. It's very difficult in a situation like this, where you're presented one side of the story, to try to come here and speak when all your buttons have been pushed and strings pulled about the humanitarian mission to people who have suffered much. There's no doubt about this. I have been involved in the organizations that have been represented here as an observer, as a volunteer. And many times we have discussions outside of presentations. And one thing is we try to make analogies, and I guess the analogies I'm going to make here is one from the medical viewpoint. in that, in a medical viewpoint, you have symptoms of a disease. You have the diagnosis, you have the treatment, you have the rehabilitation. All this was presented here today, again, from one point of view.
I'm sorry.
I
would
think
you
that
present? Excuse me. Would you present your point of view in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Because
I'll do it in 2
University of
minutes.
Minnesota
2
is a free
minutes.
speech
2 minutes.
institution. Please,
The
please
points
listen
that-
to me. Please, please. This is a free institution of free speech. Present your view in 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. I didn't have a time frame before, but you know, the point was made that this is about oil, counterterrorism, and foreign relations. Oil, we know now, is the basis for our economy. The control of oil is very important. Libya represents a large deposit of oil. It was nationalized under Gaddafi, and those monies were going to support education, healthcare, but also going to build an alternative economic system to the Western one that would be using its profits towards other programs in Africa. The reason why the African Union was not supportive of this action was because Libya had been working with the countries of Africa to try to deal with those symptoms of why this is happening. Lack of education, resource distribution, clean water, health, standard of living. One thing we have to think about is who created a humanitarian crisis and who's paying for it. In 2009, Gaddafi, you can see this going on the internet, had his picture taken, shaking hands with Obama, Prime Minister Blair from England, President Sarkozy from France, President Berlusconi from Italy, all members of the other side of this war. Also, we have to remember that the United Nations, they passed a resolution, arms embargo, on the Libyan conflict when it was brought to the public's attention. But 1 month after this arms embargo, it was released by the Washington Post and New York Times that Obama had passed a secret directive funneling arms and military covert operation aid to the Libyans. Also, after 1 month after this, the United Nations passed a no-fly zone after the armed conflict began to escalate. But this did not mean a no-fly zone for military aircraft. In fact, according to US military, over 20,000 missions have been flown over Libya that included bombing that still goes on today. So I think that one of the things is we have to diagnose what's going on here, why it's going on here. And I would say again that this is a problem that was created by the rich economic interests that want to control the oil, that want to control the diagnosis, and that want to control the treatment and the rehabilitation in order to prop up a decaying system that we now know no longer works for us.
Thank you very
much. It's falling
much.
apart.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
I shall make mine fairly quick.
2 minutes, please.
Yeah, well, I'll try to stay in that democratic framework of 2 minutes.
Yes, you're not a speaker.
So-
Remember, you're out there.
So I want you to answer the question. Why have you avoided the following? 1, the 2 marches in Libya, in Tripoli, each over 1 million people in favor of Gaddafi. I have pictures of those rallies. That's a population of 2 million. in Tripoli and 6 million in all of Libya. 1 million people came out in supporting Gaddafi. I have pictures of that. And you could all go to www.globalresearch.ca out of Canada to get some truthful information on what's been going on in Libya. Another thing is, Gaddafi handed out millions of guns to the people. Would a brutal dictator who is afraid of the people hand them millions of guns? No, he did this because so they could protect themselves from the true brutal people who are attacking them, and not in a peaceful manner. And that's your rebels who are really counter-revolutionaries. Okay, the third thing I want you to answer: how is it that Gaddafi took Libya from the poorest country in Africa to the country with the highest standards of living in all of Africa? How is it that Gaddafi did that?
That's a lie.
No, it's not a lie.
Please.
It's not a lie at all.
Please.
It's something that you don't want to face and answer. And I
Please
understand.
don't debate. Please raise your question. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next one, please. Please, next one.
I don't know if you want to answer those.
No. Please go ahead. They're accumulating. They're belaboring, writing all these things so that they can rebuttal for 5 minutes each.
I
Yes.
just had a question for Congressman Ellison about, I know you flew over Libya recently, and having been in the countries on both sides and had some glimpse at least of humanitarian efforts there and all of the conflicts that have some similarities to what the two people before me are raising too. What is your trip? How do you view Libya from having seen it from both sides?
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, let me say that I am committed to making a trip, God willing, to Libya at the earliest possible time. My friend Ali Jaroushi was there trying to arrange some things. We had some snags that basically got in our way, but even though we were slowed down, we're not going to be stopped, God willing. So there's that. I'll say this. In Tunis, it was very clear that Libya was on the minds of everybody we talked to. We made it around the city, talked to diverse numbers of people, and there's no question about it. There are very large numbers of Libyan refugees in Tunis. And so there's no doubt that, look, I've never been to Libya, and I don't claim to be an expert. Several people on this panel have been, but I haven't talked to anybody credible who has told me that there is some rich civil society, because they've told me that Gaddafi prevented that kind of thing. Having gone to Egypt, on the other side, again, there are Libyan refugees in Egypt as well. Egypt, when I was there, seemed a lot more consumed with its own issues, but there's no doubt that they view a regional political shift as necessary to ensure their own destiny. Obviously, Egypt is trying to stabilize its country and democratize its country. And when I was there, a lot of the things focused on were Egypt focused. Of course, there are a lot of other issues we talked about, but there's no question the stability of Libya is essential to its neighbors. There's no doubt about it.
Now can somebody answer my question?
Please. You're disrupting. Don't do that, please.
I'm just asking my questions to be answered.
You are not respecting the free speech. Please.
You're not respecting free speech, sir. That's what you're not respecting.
I'll answer.
Yeah, let me answer the question.
Do you want to?
No, go right ahead.
I would like to address the gentleman and the lady regarding both their questions. And I'll start with the gentleman just a little bit about a comment about the African Union. The relationship between the Gaddafi and the African Union was a joke. And the reason that I say that is because Gaddafi basically bought those people with money. A lot of them, they got rich, and all of us know how poor some of these countries are, but when you look at their leaders, they have a lot of wealth. And it was no difference in Libya. As far as to the no-fly zone, We will be forever grateful to the United States and the coalition from the Europeans for saving the lives of almost 500,000 people in Benghazi. The day that those airplanes flew over Benghazi, when Gaddafi's planes were coming from Tripoli, flying toward Benghazi, trying to bombard that city because his son, the night before, has promised that they will be in Benghazi within 24 hours. And they don't care if they can wipe out the entire city. If that did not happen, we would have a massacre in our hands that we will remember forever. And the world will never forgive themselves for that. As to the lady's questions, excuse me for saying this, but I think you are absolutely misled about the Gaddafi regime and the atrocities. And
please.
I listened to you,
please.
And I appreciate your comments very, very much. And I appreciate your viewpoint. But let me tell you about the March of Liberty, the 1 million people that you have mentioned. There has never been such a march of Libyan that will follow the Gaddafi for 1 million. Let me tell you, please, I lived in Tripoli. I was born there. I was raised there. I know the Green Square that used to be called the Green Square. That Green Square does not even take 1 million people, even if you stack them on top of each other. Let me just tell you, what happened in some of those marches that he has called himself, and we all saw those pictures when he said, United States, take a look at all these people. The Arab world, take a look at those people. If you have looked at those pictures, okay, some of the folks in the background, they were tricked into coming into the squares. A lot of them, they have their kids and their loved ones in prisons. They were told by the Gaddafi cronies that for you to be able to get your kids, we want you to come into the Green Square. They had some areas where they had to sign up, and they tried to bring in as many people as possible with them, and some of them, they did that so they can have their loved ones back. But afterwards, at night, when some of them went to the police stations and to the prisons to get their folks back, they were told that there was no such a thing that it's going to happen. And there was no 1 million people, and I wish to God that someone will count those heads in there, because if there was 1 million people, Gaddafi would be in power today. But he does not have, at the most, probably maybe 5 to 10% of the people that followed Gaddafi, and some of them are still fighting. And for your own information, Libya is about 90% liberated today, and we have 6 million people. And you probably have seen the 1 million marches after Gaddafi that was formed in the Green Square and some other cities. Number 2, you talked about the guns that Gaddafi has given. Gaddafi did not give 1 million guns to the people. We don't have 1 million guns in Libya, and he only gave those guns to his own people and his mercenaries that he has distributed all over the streets in Tripoli and some other cities so they can go out and torture the rest of the community in there. And if you're talking about Libya being the poorest, he took it from being the poorest country to the richest country. If you travel to Libya, and I wish to God that you will do that.
Shh. Please. Please, please don't disrupt. Well,
it's even the highest standards of living. Today, as we speak, and this is all over the news, we have people live in shacks in Libya, where they have lived in shacks made out of pieces of wood and metal. And during the winter time, they suffer from the rain, and during the summer times, they suffer from the heat. Libya, with all the wealth, and we all knew that the United States today have about $34 billion in assets. Most of them belong to the Gaddafi people. We have seen pictures of how his sons and his family lived. We have evidence of how much money of the Libyan money was taken out of the country and is being controlled by Gaddafi and his own people. The Libyan people don't even have the most standard, a minimum standard of education, health system, or transportation system. He destroyed the entire infrastructure of a country. The Libyan people had to go to get medical care from Tunis, which is considered to be one of the poorest countries. They had to go to Jordan and Egypt to get that. And so for your own information, everything that Gaddafi has done was only centered about his own agenda and what he wants to get out of that country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tahoni.
Can I say this, Professor?
Please, go ahead.
All I want to say is this. You know, I have not been to Libya. I would like to go, as I just indicated to you. So the way that I try to form my decision-making about whether to support the president's action and the UN and supporting the no-fly zone and other things like that is I reached out to my friends who were born, raised, and lived their lives in Libya. Because I could read all I want, but of course you have different people saying different things. Obviously, different websites say different things. And so I talked to the people who've been there. And I got to tell you, I haven't met the Libyan who is angry or disappointed that the U.S. stepped up to help the Libyan people against Gaddafi. I haven't met that person. If that person exists, I'm happy to talk to them. But I've started meeting with the Libyan community right after the demonstrations began. Some people in this room today know that. We met in the hotel room and in restaurants. We got together and we talked about this stuff. And so if there's a group of Libyan Americans who want to say, Keith, this is the wrong thing, we're angry, we didn't like what the U.S. did, I'm happy to talk to that person. But I need to hear from somebody who has been to Libya, who knows the country, who's had their feet on the ground, not just somebody who read a website. I mean, seriously. I mean, we need.
Please.
I'm just saying.
Please.
All I want to say is, and again, I didn't interrupt anybody as they spoke, and I respect.
Please.
And I respect everybody's opinion. But I mean, the thing is, you know, if the thing is that, and again, I'm not really addressing the individual who, I'm talking to everybody else. I'm looking for good, solid information from people who have some firsthand information. Those people led me to the conclusions that I came to, which is that I supported the President Obama's action, supported the UN action, and I'm telling you, the United States, I believe, greatest, strongest country in the planet, has an obligation, a responsibility to help vulnerable people. And if we don't step up to that obligation, I feel that we are not living up to what we claim we're about. Now, there's no doubt that in the history of our country, bad decisions have been made, mistakes have been made. Iraq and Afghanistan being two of them. But when it comes to this situation, when the Arab League, when the UN, when Libyan Americans say, we need your help in order to maintain our country and not get wiped out, I don't know how we can say no to that. And so I was glad to be in favor of the President's action.
Thank you, Congressman. Let me, for the interest of the different people who are coming here and trying to raise issues and ask questions, if there is any contention and need for further exchange, I think after this meeting you can do it. There's no problem. This is a debatable society, actually. Let's the meeting continue because other people have questions. Please.
Hello. My name is James Standifer, and I'm an ophthalmologist, and I apologize for being late. I walk with slow motion and live a long way away. I've been to Libya a number of times. I left private practice 18 years ago, I guess, and I've been to over 31 developing countries, several of them multiple times. I first went to Libya about 8 or 9 years ago before the entry was legal, so to speak. I got permission from Secretary of Commerce, but not the Secretary of whatever it was, who wrote me a very nice letter saying, I'm really sorry. I went anyway, and when I got to Libya while they were waiting for me, they stamped I said, stamp my passport, because I don't want people to think I slept in the Amsterdam airport for 2 weeks. I teach 5 ophthalmologists. It's a 2-week workshop, 5 ophthalmologists from different training institutions. I've done that in Misrata and Tripoli. I've also been to Tripoli 3 or 4 times for meetings, to speak at meetings. I was introduced to this was long before all this conflict. I've also taught in many countries in the Middle East: Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Yemen, Algeria, Tunisia, Mauritania. So I have a good feel for that situation. I can't speak about the politics, but I can say this, and I'm sure it spills over to many things besides medicine. There aren't good teachers. I always have to start with teaching the very basics of anything: history, physical, algorithmic thinking, to come up with a diagnosis. The cataract surgery is and I've done a lot of it in countries before I started teaching glaucoma. It's very dramatic because you restore vision like that. Not so with glaucoma. I guess I don't have any questions, but education should be number 1 on the list of things to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next one, please.
My question, I think, is for Bas. This spring, your team went to a country that 2 months before wasn't even on your agenda or radar, I think. How do you deal with language barriers and security issues?
When you're a disaster response organization, you know that disasters are going to occur. You just don't always know where they might be. Libya, of course, and the whole changes in North Africa and Middle East are part of that. But we have established procedures in place. We have, again, one of our volunteers here has been to Banda Aceh, has been to Uganda, has been, where else have you been, Mike? Sri Lanka. So we have a whole checklist of things that we work through to be sure that we know what are the things we need to address. What we really depend on in most of the countries where we are serving, so we're in Somalia right now, for example, our local partners on the ground who help us with translation and with security. Last night, Jamal and I were meeting with a Libyan American physician here in Minnesota who has family in Tripoli and Misrata, and they own hotels and other accommodation situations in both of those areas. He said, whenever your teams come, they can stay with us. So local people help us with the kinds of logistical support we need, and they provide us often with the translation that we need as well in those places. And it's truly then a partnership. And what we hope happens is that the exchanges that our teams have with the people on the ground, mediated through translators, that knowledge then stays, because much of the actual exchange has been with people who live there. And so that's really how we are able to respond so quickly, I think, in those locations. And in this case, definitely the Libyan American community and its connections and network inside Libya was an enormous help.
Thank you very much. Next one.
I don't have a question, and I don't want 2 minutes, just 1, I think. I can throw a humanitarian aid perspective out a little bit, I guess, for these two. I have appreciated hearing about accomplishments. There's no question there's been atrocities in that country, but the primary focus is getting humanitarian aid into that country, improving relationships to open doors to get other forms of aid into the country. Nobody wants to know who's right, who's wrong. We're not here to take sides. this isn't the proper forum for that. And so I'd like to say that I appreciate all of your work and what you've done to improve communications with the country, form relationships, and get that door for international relationships open so some things can be improved and developed for humanitarian assistance. So.
Thank you very much. Next one, please.
I just want to say that I heard on National Public Radio, even when Lourdes Garcia Navarro was in Tripoli especially, I guess that 30 to 40% of the people still supported Gaddafi. They don't like what's going on. And I'd like to know how many civilians on both sides have been killed by NATO. Do you have those figures?
Thank you. Anybody wants to?
I don't have it.
You don't? Okay. Well, no knowledge. Okay. Next one, please. Anybody wants to?
Hi, my name is Abdul Khalifa. I'm an American Libyan. I would like to thank you for all the good work you did for the Libyan people. And on behalf of the Libyan people, a person who was in Libya just 2 weeks prior to what happened on February 17th. People in Tunisia and in Egypt, they uprised. We know what happened. A few people killed. One innocent life gets killed is too many. What happened in Libya is the total opposite. You have a president who called his people rats. In my opinion, does not deserve to rule that country anymore. And he ruled Libya as a real state, it's not as a country. And he put us in pretty much in misery. So I would just like to thank you for the good work, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Can I just make this comment?
Yes, please.
I think it's important now, that we have these, now that, things look like they're coming to a close. I know they're not wrapped up totally, that we get together and really chart a new relationship between the U.S. and Libya, and the U.S. and really the whole region. Because I think that, what's going on now is that the United States is going to have to deal truly with Arab public opinion in a way that we historically have not really had to deal with. And so I think it's important that we begin some real people-to-people relationships. I think that the Libyan American community, for example, can be a key bridge to this effect, and that we need to start thinking about sister city relationships, student exchanges. I think all of us need to be on the lookout to increase our country's foreign assistance budget. This is something that's, I can tell you as a politician, when the other side is saying cut, 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 this is one of the things that they want to cut. But I think that given the changes in this region, it's one of the worst things to cut.
Yes.
And so, like I believe the doctor mentioned education. Yeah. This is the time to increase Fulbrights. This is the time to increase these sort of things that I believe actually do promote security.
Yes.
And so I just offer that because right now we're talking about dealing with a crisis situation, stabilizing the country. But tomorrow's going to get here sooner than we think, and we need to, as Americans, just bear in mind that as the Middle East is changing, we cannot stay the same.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Sarah Stolland. I'm a student here at the Humphrey Public Policy student, as well as the representative for one of the co-sponsors, MIN. But as I'm learning in my classes, I'm a first year, so I get to start learning about international development, and that is also something of interest to me. I like to think about humanitarianism kind of on a global scale and how that is affecting the development of the countries, as you have both discussed. But my questions are kind of specifically to Medical Teams International, and two of my questions, well, the first one is, kind of what is your timeline for the aid and the support that you give for a new country that you're adding to kind of your list of areas and programs that you're working in? or other countries that are going to be affected by disaster? Like, are you going to kind of stay with the country for a while, or is it a long-term kind of support that you're hoping to implement? And then the second question I had was, as we're talking about these partnerships and how important that is in developing a country, does MTI have any formalized partnerships with other organizations that kind of affect, I mean, you're really working in medical help and relief. Are there other organizations that are kind of working on different areas of development that kind of work in conjunction with you?
Okay. Thanks for those questions. I'm happy to respond to that. As far as timeline for support, we have about 25 countries that we have identified that are, from our perspective, are focus countries. And what we've looked at are things like the annual income per person, the mortality rates for young children, levels of malnutrition, all those different factors. And so those are countries that we typically are committed to. Libya is was not one of those countries. Neither was Sri Lanka. And so maybe I'll use Sri Lanka a bit as an example of what might happen in Libya. And I mentioned Sri Lanka, only Mike was there as one of our volunteers. We responded in Sri Lanka after the South Asia tsunami in 2004. Just 2 weeks ago, we actually had a ceremony involving the Minister of Health and a number of other officials in Sri Lanka where we completed our involvement. That was about now, 7 years since the tsunami. In that time, we sent teams initially to help with the disaster response issue with the tsunami. So many people lost their homes, hospitals and clinics were destroyed, people needed primary health care, and then we moved towards rebuilding some of those facilities. And then, interestingly enough, what happened in Sri Lanka was that people realized how poorly prepared they were to respond to this disaster in terms of emergency medical response. And so we wound up actually then training about 50,000 people throughout the country in first response emergency medical care and establishing a whole organized, formal emergency first responder certification program that now in Sri Lanka you can dial their equivalent of 911 and get somebody to come and provide first response care to you. That has been an enormous long-term long-standing impact in Sri Lanka. We did some community health work, but basically we said to ourselves, okay, we have completed the work that we felt we needed to be doing in terms of, so we moved from emergency care to primary care to rebuilding health facilities to training. And that probably is not a bad template to think about with Libya. The emergency needs are coming, we hope, to an end. There is definitely a need for some targeted rebuilding of some of the health facilities and so on, but there is a desperate need for training, as our former questioner pointed out. And so I think, and the training is in not just technique, but in sort of, I think, more what true medical care should really be, because there's been 40 years, in a sense, of neglect and demoralization and all of that throughout that whole area. So I think potential is then for the next 5 years to be focused on that. Part of it depends on what happens with the Ministry of Health. We don't just go in there and unilaterally say, oh good, here we are, this is what we're going to do. It requires consultation with people on the ground, and so it's difficult for me to just say, this is what we will do. We're going to have to go into a process of discussion, as well with our Libyan American friends, to say, what is it that you feel are priorities? How can we support what you're doing? Ultimately, we're going to leave that country, but we hope when we do, we have left behind strengthened local capacity that will continue then to help people as they move forward. So that would be kind of the plan, potentially, depending on all these variables that we obviously need to take into consideration. As far as partnerships, you know, we work, and Libya is an interesting example. We're working there with International Medical Corps. They are based in Los Angeles. So we are working in partnership with American health organizations that are similar to ours. But we're also working on the ground with the Tunisian Red Crescent Society. You saw the slides that Jamal pointed out, because the supplies that we sent in were used in refugee camps where they were in charge. So it's really important that there be integration and not just competition or unilateral decision making. In addition, we are focused on health and medical, so we aren't in the area of housing or nutrition. And so it's really key that the other groups that are focused on that, for them, that's their strong point, that we work collaboratively. So Somalia, for example, right now, we are responding there to the famine and drought, as you know. I'm sure you know there in East Africa, providing medical care and primary health care, but in cooperation with a group called World Concern, they are doing agricultural development, food distribution, clean water development, because it's important that you don't only look at this one narrow focus, but recognize that it's a much broader area. But in that response, then, we got to do that collaboratively, and I think that's in our DNA as well. And I think you can see it here in this partnership, where we really are sharing this together. And the hope isn't so much what do we gain as Medical Teams International, but what's left after we're there. And that's our real question that we hope we'll answer with this planning.
Thank you very much. We are right on the dial, I guess, 11:30. And let me, on behalf of the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, thank our great speakers today. And thank you, the audience, as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the debate must go on, and I respect these differences, I think, and given my background, some of you may know me, I think it should be continued. Thank you very much.
Very good.